we're going to look at how to create a fish fin in the Something Fishy blanket. So here I have a strip that I've completed of fish. And if I go down to the beginning, so I've already completed a couple of the fins from this fish and here. And now I'm ready to make the fish on the next fin. So I'm going to start out, and in the pattern it says to place a marker around the 5th stitch on the 13th bump, but I haven't been doing that. What I do is I count the ridges. So ridge is a smiley face and a frowny face combined that kind of forms this thing that I think of a ridge, and in between there's kind of these, valleys. This area here, that's kind of a valley. So if I count from the bottom, I want to count up 12 ridges. So go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. The 13th ridge will be this next one here. So counting over, I want to count the frowny faces to determine the number of stitches. So, and I want the 5th stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the stitch that you were instructed to mark in the pattern. And again, I'm not doing that, I just am counting. So I'm going to take my yarn, and note that I've inserted the needle from the nose of the fish towards the tail. So the knitting needle is inserted right through there. And I'm going to take the yarn and I'm going to draw a loop through there. So I've now drawn a loop through that stitch, and then I'm going to pick up and knit stitches in 13 of these ridge stitches on the ridge 13. So the next one is the next frowny face. So there's the first frowny face that we went through. Here's the second frowny face, the third one, the fourth one. So I'm just going to work along here, maybe leaving like a 3-inch tail here, and pull through stitches up to 13. So I'm just coming through all these frownies here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So if I count to the end, the next frowny, I should have 4 frowny faces at the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's correct. And then I should have 13 stitches. I'll count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Perfect. Okay. So now I'm going to turn, and the first row is a wrong side row, and it's a plain knit row. So I'm just going to knit these stitches across. So all the decreases for the fin occur on the right side rows, which are the even rows. Okay, and I'm just going to continue. I just tighten this up, but I'll deal with that end later. So now we're going to do the decreased row on the right hand side. So it's knit 2 together, knit to the last 2 stitches, and then SSK, slip, slip, knit. Knit 2 together, then knit to the end. And then SSK. Wrong side row, knit. So this pattern uses Malabrigo Rios, which is great superwash yarn from Malabrigo. It's a plied yarn, beautiful colors, really soft and lovely to work with. Okay, and then again, so that we just completed our wrong side plain knit row, and so this is the pattern row of knit 2 together, knit to the end, SSK. these fish work up very quickly because each row you're decreasing, or each ridge you're decreasing 2 stitches. Okay, so back to the wrong side row. And we're just going to do plain knitting on the wrong side. Then right side row is knit 2 together, knit to the end. So this, when I get down to this small number of stitches, this is when I do a purl backwards, because it is a way to avoid having to turn the needles when you're just working with a small number of stitches. And I have a video on this that you can check out, and it's like a super awkward thing at first. But you know, anything you practice and you get better at it. I also find it less confusing when doing wrap and turn, which we don't use on this blanket, but it's a lot easier to keep track of where you are when you're not having to turn your work and you're just always looking at the right side and doing your wraps on the right side. Okay, so I'm now down to 5 stitches. Oops. So when I have 5 stitches, that's the last time that I do my pattern row of knit 2 together, knit to the end, SSK. So here we do that. Knit 2 together, knit to the end, which is just 1 stitch, SSK. And then we're just gonna knit those 3 stitches. I'm doing purl backwards. And then on the last right side row, we do a CDD, a central double decrease. So we slip 2 stitches together to the right needle, knit 1, and then pass the 2 slipped stitches over. Okay, so now we have our fin completed there, and I'm going to cut the yarn, leaving about 6 inches, including what's on the loop. Then I'm gonna pull the loop all the way through. And then the first thing I do is that I turn it over and I do the weaving of this yarn, of the cast on, or the beginning tail, underneath the fin so that it doesn't show. If you're using the duplicate stitch, using the duplicate stitch on the wrong side automatically will secure your yarn so that a knot isn't needed. So here I'm just following the last row, or actually it's the first pick up and knit row along here, and I'm going in and out, just following those stitches along. And I'm going to continue doing that until I have about 1 inch left. And I'm using here a finishing needle from Susan Bates, and these come in a package of like assorted sizes, and this is the one this blue one is the one I like to use for worsted yarn. And what this allows is that you can, sorry, I'm getting a little off the frame there. You can slide, the yarn along, and you can use either end of this needle. So it allows you to work with a very, very short yarn. So I could actually, take another stitch here to get it down to about 1 inch. So I want to get it down to the length of this seam that not the seam, but this length of area here where I did the duplicate stitch. And so I think I'm about that point. I have about 1 inch left of the yarn. And so now I'm going to insert that yarn through all the duplicate stitches, like between the regular stitches and the duplicate stitches that I did, in order to secure the yarn so that I will never see it again. And I really believe this is the neatest and the not necessarily quickest, but the best way of weaving in and securing yarn. So if I wanted to, I could cut this. I guess I can cut that a little shorter. But basically, I will never see this end again, no matter how many times this is washed. Okay, so that's a nice, neat way to finish off. Notice that you don't see that yarn it virtually disappears. If you ever have to undo it, it makes it a little bit difficult. So now I'm going to thread the tail that I cut off, and I'm going to find a middle stitch here. I actually have not been too particular. I just kind of fold it over, and wherever it happens to land, that's where I decide to do my tacking. So I'm going to insert the needle down in a stitch that's in the middle of the fish, and go down to the back, front to back, and then I'm going to turn it over and find a neat place to bring the yarn back up, so it's such that it's secure, just taking one stitch. So I do tend to flip it over and check on both sides that I'm hitting where I want to, because I don't want the back to look like super messy. So I try to make the stitches neat and fairly invisible as possible. So I take 2 stitches of the tip of the fin down, and then I'll start tacking it up just a little bit on the sides. Okay. So this would probably be enough to secure it, but I just feel like it should have a few more stitches. So I'm just going to go up this one side of the fin here, going down, taking a stitch, coming back up. Oops, lost my yarn. Rethread. Okay, so come back up next to it. I'm going to go under that ridge to the next valley and then poke the yarn back down. I like to sew as invisibly as I can because that produces the best result. Okay, so that's enough stitches. It's nice and tacked down. And then I kind of, I insert the yarn, or I insert the needle through to the back, and then I just kind of weave it back and forth through the valley stitches to get to the other side. So I'm just kind of weaving it back and forth. It doesn't really matter that much, but I just feel like it should be kind of tacked to the knitting somehow, and this is a way of doing it not so visibly. Okay, so I've just kind of, from the back, I've just been kind of, weaving the needle through. Okay, so now I'm going to take a few more stitches over to the tip again, just following the same thing, checking on the back and making sure I'm not making a huge mess in my sewing. Coming back up on the front, going under the ridge, and then back down. And then I'll just come back over to here. I'm going to now tie off in the place where I started at the tip of the fin. And I'll just do, standard sewing tie off where you keep inserting the needle through the last loop that you made 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Pull very slowly. Adjust with fingers if needed to push it down. And now I still have an end here, so I'm going to insert this back to the front, and I'm just going to sort of run it along the edge towards the back of the fin and, kind of tuck it in. I didn't feel it was necessary to do any more weaving of that end. And then I'm going to trim it. Okay, so that's how I've been doing the fins. And again, all of this sewing and tacking, that's just kind of my personal preference. You could probably just tack the end down and leave these edges open, but I just felt like it could be a little secure. I can still stick my pinky through here so it's not completely sewn down. Okay, I hope that helps you make your fins, and we'll see you next time. Bye.